Christ is risen from the dead. By his death, he has trampled upon death, and to those in the tombs, bestowing life everlasting. Lord, please bless our proceedings this evening and open our minds and our hearts that we may learn something new and serve you in all things. Amen.
Thank you. And I will turn it over to Father Jim to introduce George Orfanakos, our speaker. And then later, Pete Nassos will also be presenting as well. So, Father Jim?
It's a privilege for me to introduce George Orfanakos. He has church life in his DNA. He has no choice but to serve the church. For generations, he's been in the church. His family's been in the church. And he talked about the Ortorcal. That's his family's baby as well. So God bless you, George. Thank you for joining us. Since 2015, he has served as executive director of the American School of Classical Studies in Athens, located in Princeton, New Jersey. Among his many not-for-profit fundraising activities and development activities, George was president of the Children's Tumor Foundation, director of development at NYU Langone Health, and a premier academic, which is a premier academic medical center here in New York. He got his BA and M.Div from Hellenic College and Holy Cross, and he has had great experience in the church in all aspects and really on what we talk about in this group on a regular basis. So he's going to bring a lot of very practical and yet also empirical experience to this meeting. I look forward to having him start. God bless you, George.
Thank you. Thank you. Christos Anesti, everybody. It's great to be with you. I have to also say I currently serve as the executive director of the American School of Classical Studies at Athens. So I just want to say thank you to them because in this capacity, I do my day job, but they also encourage me also to do this type of work too from time to time to speak. And the American School, if you don't know, is the largest overseas research center preserving, promoting, and protecting Greece's historic past. It's a consortium, about 200 universities in Kolonaki in Greece, 200 American universities, but operates and excavates all throughout Greece. So there's that commercial. So let me start. I know I was given about, I guess, up to 20 minutes is what I was told, but I'll sort of dive into it and stop it. I won't go, if you want to stop, you raise your hand or tell me, and we can save whatever I have to say for another day, but let me just dive into it right away. So first of all, it's a joy to be in this group. I really applaud all of you for doing this on a consistent basis. I think this is amazing. And to have guest speakers come in and do this is just phenomenal and something that needs to happen elsewhere. So for me, you hear my background. For those that know, I was a Greek Orthodox priest. I served for 13 years in churches Astoria, in the Bronx. I was Metropolitan Nathaniel's parish priest when he was my altar boy. And we have a great love for him and his family and his mom and his dog and the whole crew. And we're, I admire his work and his ministry and thank him for his blessings. And then I was in St. George and Clifton and served with my dad for about 6 years. I left the ministry in 2005, wanting to get remarried. They say if you want to have a plan, if you have a plan, make God laugh. You'll make God laugh. My plan was to stay a priest forever. Unfortunately, I got divorced. I stayed for about 5 years after, and then wanted to move on. So made the difficult choice to leave the priesthood and enter this nonprofit world. And from that time, so I had 13 years in the priesthood, and then it's been about 18 years now outside of the hood, what I call the priesthood. And but now it's come full circle. In the beginning, you're sort of establishing yourself, and I entered this nonprofit space, and a lot of the stuff I did was from my gut. And truth be told, one of the questions asked to me a lot of times, how'd you get your first job? And the reality is I had to change the word priest to executive director. I had to lie, L-I-E. But I did it with permission because I put it on there because they said people, when they see your resume, and they see these parishes, they're going to have a preconceived notion of what a priest is. And in a Catholic church, it may be something, a rabbi may be something else. But in reality, in the Greek Orthodox Church, truth be told, I can tell you 100%, they are executive directors of nonprofits, small nonprofits often, but yet the skill sets that I've now tried to hone for the past 18 years certainly apply. And we're going to get into a little bit of that in just a little bit. And I would say, if you like what you hear, another time, maybe we can get together for a longer duration or in person and we can talk about it. But basically, you know, as a nonprofit professional now, I have to be grateful for the fact that the church is inviting me back to speak. Now I'm in a unique position, and I was kind of shy in the beginning to say I'm actually going to do these types of things. But the reality is I had to realize, you know, I stand on a bridge. On the one side is my life as a clergyman, and with my grandfather, my father, my brothers, and the whole priesthood there. On the other side is my 18 years as a layman, a chanter, now a parish council president, you know, and the parish council member, doing whatever I can, and, you know, this type of thing. But on this bridge that I stand as a nonprofit administrator and a professional. So I stand with this experience that I cannot cut, that really has given me a special set of glasses to look at both the clergy and the laity, and to make recommendations to both, and to say, hey, wake up. Hey, here's where we need to be, and here's what's going to happen. Let me tell you. And so I was, Father Jim was at the clergy lady conference. Tina, make sure he doesn't come in here. A clergy lady conference for the New York district, and I gave a keynote speech for about 40 minutes, and I highlighted 12 different points. And the 12 points that I talked about are basically core principles that nonprofits have to, that churches should follow in order to address certain needs. We're not going to get into that today, but I am going to start with this. You know, when I was at NYU, it was one of the top fundraising operations in the nation. It was second to it was like at the level of Harvard and Stanford and these types of operations. It was so advanced. They had, you know, computer systems and different things that they were writing code for themselves for prospecting and cultivating people and things like this. But the thing that stuck out to me was when we had trainings, they actually wouldn't send us to like these association of fundraising professional or these institutional things. They actually hired for-profit consultants to come in and train us because we were at such an advanced level. So these guys, which they amazed me. They were I think one of the guys was 17 grand an hour. Okay. I couldn't believe it, but they were data driven. They did their research. It was something for me eye-opening to see how they handled this. But one of these guys came in, I'm going to get to why I'm talking about this. And he basically said this. He said, if you, to understand, he put up a chart ranking the most respected nonprofits in the United States. These are nonprofits that people feel are doing great work. They adhere to their mission. They attract the best talent, okay, and manage their finances and operations the best. So it's like a family feud. If I, you know, put them on the screen and you'd have to guess, these are the order that they come up with, right? And he goes, after doing several studies, here was the order. He starts off and he says, okay, at the top of the list, he's got museums and hospitals. Museums and hospitals play at a very high level. Below that, he's got Ivy League universities because they're, you know, funneling all this money. They're graduate based. They have the support to really recruit people, and then that produces, you know, more. Then you have colleges and universities. Then below that, you have large local nonprofits like your YMCA with 100 employees, or your Boys and Girls Club, or whatever you have. Then he went to local chapters of national nonprofits like the whatever, I don't know, Des Moines area, you know, Autism Speaks chapter, you know, the American Cancer Society, local level, right? And he goes through this entire list. And when he got to the bottom of that list, who do you think was sitting there? Churches, religious institutions, synagogues. We were at the bottom, right? At the very bottom. What that was saying was, we're not able to attract the best talent. We don't know how to manage our finances and organizations like these other things. And people understand that, right? And that's what happens. But then he says like this, but when he asked the same group who ranked these organizations that are the following question, their response was different. He asked, if things were going to get difficult and all of a sudden you lost a bunch of your money and you had to cut support from all of your organizations, who would you cut last? You know who was at the top of that list? Us. Religious institutions, synagogues, churches, right? What does that mean? It means that people invest with their heart Okay, they invest with their heart, and that the church, we, Christ, the mission, what we do matters, and it touches people in a special way. So much so that they'll put away what they know or what they see sometimes, and say, well, you know, maybe we don't make the best decisions, or maybe, you know, or whatever. They forgive us and they still invest. It's like I likened it to it's like buying FTX today. You know, it's like buying Lehman Brothers today, right? A lot of times, and that's the kind of the mentality. Now, why am I sharing this and being a little dramatic? I have to tell you, because I'm sharing this with you because people have a deep connection to the church, to our faith. So deep, in fact, they're looking to look beyond our inability to operate at the highest levels of management, vision, mission, recruitment of human capital. But, and here is the key point, if we could learn to behave like hospitals and museums and other top-rated nonprofits, people would become that much more engaged with us. I believe our stewardship programs would blow through the roof, and people would be much more connected. And it's not just about dollars. I know throughout this, listen, I only have 20 minutes. I could tie this to scripture, every word, but I'm going through some of the key points because these are the things you're probably not going to hear. But what we're doing here, before we go any further, it's not really life-changing, and it's not cutting edge, and it's not, you know, how do you say, it's not parting the seas. You know, we're the Orthodox Church. They say, how many Orthodox does it take to change a light bulb, right? Change, why change? It's perfect. My yaya donated the light bulb. We don't need to, you know, God forbid, you know, we change it. So we don't do that stuff. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to hit the mark better, trying to hit the bullseye. And how do we do that? So under this pretense, I established 12 core principles and basically talk about these things. And I'm not going to get into all of them. I'll give you a couple of them, and I won't expand on it because I want to get into some of the topics that you asked me to speak about. One of the core principles was to have the heart of the Panagia, the heart of the Virgin Mary, the heart of Christ, whatever it might be, but the business acumen and vision of a Fortune 500 company. Okay, and what that means is they're not mutually exclusive. Okay, is that, you know, I was part of a community one time, and I go in and out and help, and I travel all over the place. And I went to a community one time, and honestly, we got to be honest, we got to look in mirrors. Okay, so this people had a $25 million facility. It was unbelievable. It was gorgeous. And I was talking to some people, and they said they just came from parish council meeting. They found out that for 20 years, they only had $1 million insurance policy on the place. I said, what? And they go, well, what happened? Well, and as we started talking over dinner, it was, well, you know, this Cubado was sitting at the table. We didn't want to embarrass this guy. This one was the treasurer for 10 years. We thought everything was taken care of, Okay, that is not the business acumen of a Fortune 500 company. Okay, and if something had happened, they would have closed the church up and you would have just moved somewhere else, and that's it. But that's not being responsible, not only to Christ and his church and the inheritors of the faith, right? The one question I asked these people was, and I ask you this, think of your churches, okay? Where did you come from? Who built those places? Okay, I'm not talking about your current churches. When I was in New York, I asked that question. I pointed to a couple people, and they're like, "Oh, you know," I said, "No. Your original address wasn't 3573 Bruckner Boulevard. In the 1920s, you were at 25 Forest Avenue. Who built those places?" And the answers, and I don't know what it's like in the Midwest, but out here for sure, they were immigrants. They put their homes up, right? They mortgaged their homes to take, you know, to help these churches grow. You had priests that were entrepreneurial. They were risk takers. They opened up white pages just to find Greek names to call people to have some semblance of a church on Sunday. Okay, and what's happened over time as things have progressed is we've moved on. We've built these beautiful churches. We've built these edifices. And you know what what studies are telling us today? That 47% of people in faith don't go to church anymore. 47% across all faiths. And the reality is that we need to take a look at our behaviors. And those behaviors will impact church attendance. They'll impact church, they'll impact a lot of different things, and they'll impact also stewardship. Okay, so I won't, let me hit it because I saw a couple of you writing. I'm going to tease you with some of these. Core principle number 2, know and celebrate your past. Hospitals, know and celebrate your past. I talked about creating an archive department in your parish. Here's a little cheat for you. Go get an archive department, have people donate not money, but photos, things like this. Then take those and display them during your coffee hour in an organized, structural way. It creates emotion, it creates connection. It also is legacy giving, okay? Because you're not asking, Christina to give because you're giving. It's because, hey, look at your grandmother in the 1930s making tiropitas, It's a continued stewardship, okay? Things like that. We have in our parish here, one of the most beautiful things they ever did. Oh my goodness, it was like magic. They have the cloth for the Vasilopita here. They had people sign their names. Anyone that was in church in the 1980s, I guess it was, maybe earlier, 78 must have been. So they signed their name, everybody. And some ladies came in and they what do they call it? Needle pointed it, whatever. So your name was in a needle pointer, and they take it out every year and they lay it out, and the Vasilopita is on there as the community, and that's how they cut the Vasilopita, right? And what's cool is my signature as an 8-year-old boy is on there, right? So these types of activities that create these connections are important. I've got tons of stories. Number 3, focus on the experience. Very important, the experience of liturgical worship and how we experience that. I talk about, when you go to Walmart, they have greeters that greet you in there. They do that for a couple of reasons. One is, I think it's the first 100 feet makes like $1 million per store as opposed to. But the other thing is, number 1, it's to say it actually curtails shoplifting because someone saw you. But it's also welcome. We've seen you. So there's a dual-edged sword. So I'm not saying we got to say hello to people when they come to church because they're going to steal our candles. But what I am saying is that by saying hello and hopefully by name at some point, you start learning names. It means you matter. It means I saw you. It means Zacchaeus come down from that tree, right? That's what happened. That's what he did. And that's what we need to do. Start to develop and enhance relationships. People at the end of the day in stewardship, people give to people. Okay. So, and that's where it matters. Sermons, I'll go through. Sermons matter. That's another one. Time matters. Measure everything. Not talking about them all. I'm sorry if I'm teasing you, but develop parish leaders. And then I'll give you one more. Be the best church you can be. Be the very best church you can be. And what that means is at NYU, when I was at NYU, they would say, if only I was Harvard. And if I was at, the Children's Tumor Foundation, if only we were Autism Speaks. You are who you are. We are a church and we need to behave like a church. And actually, people will support us more. They attend our liturgy, and that is just such a beautiful thing, right? But it's the actions of the church that will inspire people. It's the actions, it's the behaviors, right? What I see happening is the non-engaged people respond most when it's service, when it's what St. John Chrysostom said. He had a great quote, great quote. And he was like, and I'm going to go to the other thing now, but he basically said, look, when you go, if the church is not doing the work of the church, feeding the poor, caring for the hungry, taking care of less fortunate, bereavement groups, children, senior ministry, call it what you want, education. If it's not doing that work, that's fine. He goes, do yourselves a favor, take a bag. And he's very, very articulate and deliberate in this. Open the doors of the church. He goes, okay, now walk down the aisle, walk up the steps, go into the altar, open that bag up, he says. Now take the gospel, take the candlesticks, take the chalices, throw all of that stuff into that bag. Now turn around, walk back out the door, go into the street and sell it. Sell everything. Then use that money to do the work of the church because your liturgy means nothing. Talk about drama, huh? Talk about drama. So with those words, I'm going to go. I was given a list of different things to talk about, and I'm going to talk just a little bit here. Number 1 was commitment from priest and parish council. So as a former priest and as a parish council member now, I will say one of the core principles I didn't touch on is harmony, momentum. People give to winning teams, okay? And momentum is our friend. And the fact is that we always want a relationship of mutual respect and harmony and love and the ability to talk and to disagree in a respectful manner if there is a disagreement. This is a very deep thing for me, I have to tell you. I've learned, when I was a clergyman and I was thrust into positions, it very much, in my opinion, and from my perspective, it really is, there's a perspective on what parish you go to. I think a lot of this really determines on where you're assigned. I mean, when I was a priest in Astoria, I was a very different priest than I was in the Bronx. And when I was in the suburbs in Jersey, it was very different. And the people I found were different. And I bet you from the East Coast to the Midwest, right, to the West Coast, you might find it different. Even though some priests, my dad, blessed memory, used to say, different, same people, different faces or something like that. But for me, I do believe that on the priesthood side, if I were guiding priests today, I would say, and this would probably talking to my younger self, would be, hey, the lay people they'll move mountains. They'll do amazing things for us, right? And in my job as an executive now, I'm best when I find people better than me, in areas that I don't know, right? And the fact is, I've been in situations as a clergyman when maybe I didn't know about real estate, but I don't know, I felt the priest and I had to speak up the loudest and start driving something. And my 28-year-old self would have been, you know what, just shut up and listen to the other guy. Why are you talking so much? Why are you? Well, it's because maybe the collar gives me that ability. So that's something as a priest, I would say that in these relationships, we have to understand our gifts, our talents, our skill sets, but the real leader is lifting other people up and identifying people that can take the lead. And as a parish council, I would say that to understand the intense pressure of the priesthood, the fact that you have, the one thing that was very difficult for me, and by way of confession, I must tell you, I actually left the priesthood with wonderful memories, with a deep gratitude and appreciation, with difficulty, but with PTSD as well. And that is because you're in a fishbowl. And, as much as they crucified Christ, no matter what you do, no matter what you say, there's always going to be somebody. And they're always going to say something. And I was never good at that. I'm sure there are guys, I'm hoping there are guys better than me. But I remember specifically being in rooms, giving sermons, giving my all, doing it for a month and a half straight, much like this season, and then going to a parish council meeting and being bombarded in a way that to this, well, actually, I'm much better now. But if you said to me, hey, I want to talk to you and I want to meet you on Tuesday, but you didn't tell me what the agenda was, I'd be freaking out for a week. Okay, because that was the priesthood for me in the Northeast. I would always get hit by different sides. And you know what? Now I've learned in my job now, it's like, oh, what are we talking about? And if they don't tell me and I get to the meeting and say, oh, thank you for bringing that to my attention. I need some time to think about that. Let's get back together in 2 weeks so I can respond, right? In the priesthood, it was this drawing out of you and constantly being on the front lines. So the mutual harmony, the respect and the love for both, it goes a long way. But it is challenging, and and yet at the same time, I think that both have to have a voice. I also think that both have to have a voice, and sometimes the priest is louder, but sometimes the parishioners need to be a little louder too. And I can say that we've been through in our parish here, we've had some turnover, and we needed to stand up in a respectful way to point out some things, and we had to do it with love. But at the same point, we had to think about the people that built the parish 100 years ago and say, can we work this out and can we figure this out? How much time I have? Am I done? I'll hit these. Diverse and active stewardship committee. Yes. I look at ages. I'm sorry. I'm in a secular job. When I hear diverse in the Orthodox Church, we should be concerned, we should be welcoming and loving to all people. I will say that. And yeah, we should be diverse. Active stewardship committee, we should, yes, certainly. I think what you're doing is amazing. Frequent and inviting communications. This is good. So I'm part marketing guy, part communication guy. That's what I love to do as sort of a creative side. And when I came to the church here, we really didn't have, we had our stewardship stuff was not really that poignant. It wasn't really that on point, but I'll show you just a couple things. And it definitely matters what you're putting out there and how you're communicating things makes a difference. And this is just one example of something we put together. Can you see it? So basically just the church, and it shows your gift on stewardship. And then we have the tree. And as you go up the tree, we kind of take ownership. I want people to know that it's, that basically it also tells somebody, if you give me $100 in your stewardship, it's touching a lot of things. Is that enough? Right? So those are the types of things, but definitely. And by the way, it's a wonderful way. The communication and the strategy is a wonderful way to blend with diversity and people that are in your community. I actually went out, it's one thing to put in the bulletin, no one finds you, but I started searching and I recruited a team of 7 or 8 people for Holy Week that were all different walks of life that had a place. They had a seat at the table. If you see the image of the Last Supper, that's usually above the holy gates, or the image of the Philoxenia to Avram, you have the 3 angels sitting there and there's the table, and the front of the table is empty. You have the 12 apostles, right? And the front of the table is empty. That's empty because that chair is for us. We're supposed to pull up a chair there. So the whole idea is to leave space and leave an opportunity for people to become engaged. And any teachers here will tell you that they become more engaged when they're doing things, okay, when you're doing things. And we believe that because that's why we baptize our young, right, when they're babies, to taste and see how good the Lord is. Finally, trust building, confidentiality, transparency, accountability, absolutely. The key here is to be transparent without saying you are transparent, okay, without having to say it. And then show appreciation, acknowledge, and celebrate. I would say there, and we had a whole day seminar on the word gratitude. Gratitude, that was at the hospital, by the way. The expression of gratitude is more important than the ask itself. And it doesn't have to, and I've also learned in this current job, it doesn't have to be in front of the pulpit, in front of everybody either. Okay, that's, the lining them up and things like that. They're anonymous giving. As a clergyman, to be aware of the stewards in your parish, and when they walk up, if a check came in, to grab Pete's hand and just to squeeze a little bit and say, thank you very much, softly, without, from the microphone saying something. We went to a monastery the other day and we picked up a bunch of little knickknacks, right? Small little things, not standard icons. People have a lot of those. A little paperweight or something that was different. And we gave it to the priest and said, when you go to these 20 people that gave us this type of thing, just leave a gift and just say thank you and say, we just want to say, something small. It wasn't done in the community hall. It wasn't done with pomp and circumstance. It was done quiet. But then at the same point, we have a couple kids that are disabled that are giving stewardship, right? That penny's worth more than the 10 grand that we get from the other guy. I mean, that guy works at Walmart actually, and gave a lot of money, and we gave him a gift too. We try to do the right thing and be appropriate and see these people through God's eyes. So anyway, I know I probably went over 20 minutes, but I think I touched on a lot of topics. Thoughts?
Thank you very much, George. This was wonderful. We'll open it up to questions.
George, this is Pete Nassus. Where can you get a list of your 12 items? I mean, is it online someplace that we can find?
I'm actually going to be publishing a book on it, so
okay.
I'll let you know. I'm working on finishing the piece. I'm giving a teaser May 15th at the Metropolis of New Jersey on it, and then I'm going to tweak it hopefully over the summer and publish on a little thing. But it is something. To be honest with you, it's really a full weekend retreat. To go through each of these points and really talk about it and identify. And I fill it all with examples. So it's not just like real concrete examples. of different things, you know? I mean, yeah. I mean, I'll give you an example, right? Experience, the experience part, okay? And this is dead truth. Experience part, we're talking about, I've been at parishes, I went in and the parish complained that they were dying. They had, you know, whatever, it was crazy. And I happened to be there for a couple of weeks and I walked in, it was a pre-sanctified liturgy. And I walked in and I looked around and I was like, oh my gosh, it's like 6 o'clock. And there were like 40 people there. I was like, wow. Oh, and they were my age. I was like, this is incredible. And I'm looking at the service and I'm like, this is great. You know, how nice is this? And of course, if you know the pre-sanctified, the curtains close at certain points, you know, so the priest's inside and I know both parts. So I'm watching. But then I'm looking outside, there's no books. No one has a book, whatever. No one knew to go on a phone. And the psalty's in the corner going, reading the prayers 100 miles an hour in Greek only. And all of those people were Americans. And the next week when I went to church, we had 5. And we were shocked at what happened. That's what I said, right? And we were shocked, right? The reality is, one of my messages I have is keep your eyes up. Keep your eyes up. You know, look at who's in your congregation. Look at who's there. And you know, and it's okay. I still believe. I mean, to be honest, truth be told, if it was all in English, it drives me nuts. It kind of like the Greek thing, right? But there's no excuse for when we repeat things in Greek not to do English. There's no excuse for things like that. But that's that's where the church is at today. So those points touch on things like that. Nobody else. I bored you.
Talked about a retreat. Would you do one for a group of parishes that got together, or one parish, or neighboring parishes? Are you doing that now?
Yeah, well, I'd have to schedule it along my thing, but yeah, we could schedule something. I mean, the summer I'm heading to Greece in 2 weeks for about a month, and then, but yeah, I'd love to do it. We want to schedule enough time. Metropolitan Nathaniel had invited me in the past, but maybe we could do something as Chicago and a broader. I would do a broader group. And I would also break out the clergy and laity at some points too, because I have some, you know, hard knocks for the clergy too, which is tough. But it's important to hear because you're not going to hear from anybody else. I was there. I was in the altar. I saw it, right? But then I'm in the laity and I see both, and it's not in a negative way. It's just like, guys, look, here's where our paths are crossing, you know. And the whole identity is, it's our behaviors, right? And that's what we can change.
Hey, George, it's Perry Siatis. Thanks very much. This is awesome, and we'll take this as a action item for the community. One thing I was asking, we have several smaller parishes that come to these calls, and one of the things that I constantly hear is we have trouble bringing in people for our stewardship committee and getting volunteers. And what are your thoughts for the smaller communities about, you know, how to get people involved in, you know, getting people involved in stewardship committee work?
Okay, great question. Let me start by saying this. One of my points that I wrote, and my brother made me change it because he didn't want me to, he's a priest, but he didn't want me to say it, but I'll say part of it. Was entitled this: we need a little less Saint Sophia and a little more Little House on the Prairie. And what I meant by that was not to be, when I think of Saint Sophia, Sophia, I'm not saying we don't need, you know, the grandiose, the beautiful, the magnificent, the gorgeous, you know, all that, the ornate of the Orthodox Church, right? But the beauty and the simplicity of the smaller parish cannot be understated, right? And where people look at that and say, oh, what, oh, well, ours is a tiny parish. You have such a gift and such a beauty that even myself that served Astoria with 100,000 parishioners and this and that, when I go to these smaller parishes, I mean, I'm talking about them now, I'm getting literally chills up my body because you're able to do unique things. You're able to engage at a smaller level. And at the end of the day, it comes down to this, you know, we look at the masses, we look at this, but then we look at the 12. It's the small group. It's the Metropolis from Sunday, right? And how do you engage a stewardship? That's a whole thing we can do on training on how you engage people. And that's a problem that we have. I mean, I just talk to the guys cutting the gyro and, you know, upstairs. And I'm like, okay, here's how you do it. You don't go find Jimmy, throw him in there, and then he starts doing the gyro, okay? And then 2 seconds later, you never showed him what to do. He doesn't know anybody, and he's out because he's like, no one said hello to me, and I'm gone. It's a whole there's a 4-step process. It's first of all, you build a relationship. That's the first thing. Stop being transactional in your behaviors. Okay, so it's not Perry, this is John. John, this is Perry. Hey, how you doing? Great. What do you do for a living? Great. Hey, you want to be on our stewardship committee? It's called dating. It's like dating. Okay. And the reality is when you're dating, and too often I see it in my jobs, and that's what I had to train at NYU. When you're there, you know, you got a meeting with a rich person. I'm sitting down with them. Of course, I want to try, you know, I want to try to get to know them. But a lot of my people, what they would do is they would sit there and they would only listen. They would kind of go through the motions when they were kind of saying their story and my story and this, that. But when it came time for the pitch or for the hit, we stood up in our chair, we spoke for 30 seconds, 40 seconds, and we stopped and we watched and we, you know, but it was transparent what you were doing. You really weren't interested, right? So I would be more pay more attention on developing friendships and relationships. And when you're bringing people in, this is the short end of it if you want to write it down. It's I do it and you watch. So Perry, I'm going to do it. Hey, Perry, come with me. I think you might be good at stewardship. I don't know. We were talking a bunch. Here's the deal. We were talking with a bunch of us and they actually said they recommended you. All of a sudden, Perry's like, who recommended me? Wasn't just George. It was 3 or 4 others. Oh, that's interesting. Don't worry about it. Just come with me and see. Oh, okay, come to a meeting. You don't have to commit. There's no commitment, whatever. I do it and you watch. And then you say, oh, did you like that? Yeah, it was a good meeting. Okay, great. You want to come again? Sure, I'll come again. No big deal. I'm doing it and you're watching. I'm doing it and you're watching. Then it goes stage 2. I do it and you do it. Hey, you want to help me with this? Yeah, I'm doing this. What do you think? Oh, okay, I do it and you do it. Back and forth. And that's a process. I do it and you do it. Then you do it. Hey, Parrot, why don't you do this? I'll watch you. Okay. Oh, you got this. Oh, nice. Oh, good job. That's awesome. You do it, stage 4, and I'm going to do something else. Okay. That's the process. We like to get to here. I do it. You do it. I'm out. Right. So that's the and that leads to burnout. It doesn't educate people and it doesn't, you know, it doesn't give them that fulfillment. But the smaller parishes are wonderful places and you can do so many incredible things, you know, and it's not about numbers. I mean, it's not about, I mean, look at my favorite gospels this Sunday, the Samaritan woman, right? The woman, the outcast going to the well, sitting there, you know, in the middle of the day, and Christ sits with her. And the apostles, what do? What's he doing over there? How is that possible? In the middle of the day, I can't understand what's happening. And the woman, you know, and he's like, hey, and it also reminds me of Psalm 1, where don't stand with the sinners, sit. You know, it's a progressive stand, sit, and what is it? Don't talk, stand, sit. This progression. It's the same thing. He talks, he sits, and then he engages and drink from the cup. And then she goes and gets the townsfolk to come in. So this, you see this? It's this engagement. We have these examples everywhere in the church. My answers are too long. I got to improve that. Sorry.
I have a question, George. That was a great answer, by the way.
Thank you, Padre.
So I used to be an executive director at a nonprofit too. I love it. I love what you're saying. I also, and I don't know if you can answer this question, but I think a business model is really important. Like I'm the parish council president too, and I love having a good business model, right? And so the question I have is, in your churches, in your parish's business model, like what percentage is stewardship of that of revenue? Because I love the idea that a healthy church will be fruitful. But for me, I'm kind of an anal retentive person. I love having a goal and saying, this is a healthy parish, and this is a healthy parish's business model. And this much of revenue ideally will come from stewardship. And I don't know what that is. So
okay, when you were speaking, there were 3 things that came to my mind.
Okay.
Business model, vision, stewardship. first thing I'm going to say, what came up to my mind was, I remember I was at a very high level discussion with huge players, much smarter than me. I had the cheapest suit on in the room, and we were sitting there talking, and they were talking about consultants, and they were talking about business plans and getting behind it, and living documents and things like this, and we're going to address it, and we're going to come back to it, and and I was sitting with, at the time, it was a big guy at Goldman Sachs, I won't say his name, and then two presidents of universities, major university, actually here, I won't say it, it's from your Metropolis, major university. But I was sitting there, and it was kind of my second meeting, but I kind of rolled my eyes. I was kind of like, I didn't say anything. And then this guy comes out, enough, he yells, right? Enough. And I said, what the heck? And I don't want to hear another word about a business plan. I don't want to hear another word about it. Just do something. Just do something. He started yelling. And then after it was over, I pulled him aside. I'm like, what happened? Now, this guy was the head of two major universities, Ivy Leagues. Okay. And I'm like, I'm surprised. He was drinking his coffee and he was shaking. He goes to me, do you know how much money my university has spent on consultants working on business plans? And at the end of the day, they did nothing. They did nothing. At this point in my life, I look at two major universities. If I said them, you'd know exactly. And he goes, and now I'm at the point in my life where I don't want to hear about a business plan again. Just go show me a guy that does something, and I'm all in. He goes, so that's where my mind went, good, bad, or indifferent. For me, I'll tell you also, vision comes first. Vision comes first. Then, and I don't even worry about the money. Vision and behaviors. Vision and behaviors, and then the communication. So in terms of stewardship, how much does it cost to run the parish? What is, what does articulating the pie chart of what it is and what the costs are, but then being accepting and understanding where people are coming in, being less transactional, where you're actually investing in those relationships and dating people, quote unquote, where you're really vested, which we're a church and we should do that. The stewardship in terms of our church, let's give you an example. So our church, I grew up here, I served here, my father and I served together for 7 years, 8 years. And when I left in 2005 or so, we had a very robust stewardship program at the time. And we had created, this was gut fundraising for me. Because I had to shoot up, we created some levels, we did whatever we could, et cetera, et cetera. Well, over the past 20 years, or 17 years, and this is why I'm sitting as parish council president, unfortunately, there was massive decline, empty seats in the pews. And what shocked me, Easter before COVID, I walked in at 11:30 with my daughter to bring her, and there was the first 8 rows were empty, and we used to have people standing on the solaire. Yeah. Okay. And I went, what happened here? Yeah. And then I came into the parish at the time and I did an analysis, okay, like a nonprofit, like I would. So I walked in and did an analysis, and I actually stopped at one point and I kind of put my hand on my shoulders and I said, on my head, and I said, it's one thing, and this is what got me to start writing. It's one thing for a church to sort of fade away or become irrelevant or not engage people. Okay. It's another thing entirely when you're aggressively doing it on purpose. And I started to evaluate behaviors, and I said, what is going on? Let me give you some solid examples. Goya, pre-COVID, parents were instructed, you can bring your kids here, but you have to wait in the car. You're not allowed to step foot in church. We are a regional church now. Some of you may have turned regional. So you mean to tell me my parents can't come in and have coffee downstairs or just chill out and become friends? They got to walk in Target aimlessly for an hour? That's what we're doing. We don't realize Goya ministry is about having the moms and dad. There's no value in mom hanging out and just BSing for a little, like this together. There's no value in that, right? Okay, so we're going to do that. Or we're passing trays, but we're losing money. So we need to pass 2 trays in church. And then I went to Sunday school to help teach, and 2 more trays came in Sunday school. I said, are you kidding me? And then on a Sunday, I go up and you look at the bulletins and every announcement was money. And it was, and these are standard things. So in nonprofit work, if you have a sidewalk that has weeds, you don't always show the weeds. You show the nice things and show what you can do too, right? So, and it became too much about money and too much. So there was a whole, and it goes back to, it's really not brain surgery. There's a lot of practical things just in the simple behaviors, and things will come around. So for me, I don't look at the business model for us here. And let me tell you what happened over that time. You know what else they did? They did away with stewardship. Okay. They moved into dues. They created minimum levels, or they called it stewardship. They called it minimum levels. They had a 0% growth. As a matter of fact, they were losing people. And I said, what? I couldn't understand it. And they set their minimum way higher than all the parishes around us did. And we ended up, when the new priest came in, we had, where we used to have 15 sacraments a month, we had 2 registered for the entire year. And here's the best part. We were shocked. Your bishop, your metropolitan, gives a book out, Autopsy of a Deceased Church. Seen it? If you haven't seen it, go get it. It's a small book, Autopsy of a Deceased Church. Go read the thing. Okay? It is amazing. It's interviewing churches that died. If you don't believe they die, if you're friends with Metropolitan Savas on Facebook, go look at his posts. He posts churches for sale all the time. I get a kick out of it. But the reality is,
Thank you.
that okay? And as predicted, my daughter is texting me where I am because I have to go home.
We appreciate very much you joining us tonight. That was awesome.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Helpful.
I'm so happy to be with you.
Thank
we'll
you.
hope to have
Hi,
you back
everybody.
soon.
Hi, Mary. I saw some other people I knew here. I just want to say thank you. And just a joy to be with all of you. And please give me more feedback, criticisms, improvements we can change. Okay?
Very good. Thank you.
George. Thank you, George.
Thank you, George. My computer just froze again, so sorry about that. And we have also Pete Nassos. We're running a little late, but if we can stay over a few minutes, we'd really appreciate it. Pete Nassos is from Aurora. I don't know that he's from Aurora, from St. Athanasios, from Aurora, in Aurora. And he has been a participant in our Tuesday night meetings and will tell us a little bit about what they've been doing at St. Athanasios. Pete?
Thank you, Myra. I appreciate it, the introduction, and good evening and Christos Anesti to everyone. I'm going to be quick. After following George, I don't know what else I can add, but I just want to share our experiences from St. Athanasius, but more importantly, talk about what I've learned in these sessions over the last 4 months that I've been participating, because it's nice to hear things and give us some guidelines and give us some ideas of what to follow up with. So I really want to thank the whole committee that's worked on this, because you've opened my eyes to a lot of different things that I always thought were the right way. You're confirming a lot of things I thought. I've been in St. Athanasius, which is in Aurora, about 40 miles west of Chicago, since 1985. I've been on the parish council off and on for those 38 years I've been there. I've been parish council president. We were founded in the mid 60s, so we're not as old as St. George, which is celebrating their 100th anniversary this year, but we've been started by immigrants who basically mortgaged their homes to start our church, just like George described. These people had a vision, our founders had a vision to develop the church, and that's where we're at today. The demographics is changing, a lot of mixed marriages now. I have 2 son-in-laws who are not Greek, but they've converted to Orthodoxy. I get a little upset and shudder a little bit when I hear all the Greek in the church, so because they don't speak Greek and neither do my kids, but you know, we get through all this stuff. So let's go to the next slide. Actually, we got a head start in this. About 2 years ago, we started a strategic planning process at St. Athanasius. We got a new priest, Father Panagiotis Basnos came in. He came from St. Peter and Paul. He wanted us to develop a strategic plan. I was asked to lead that initiative, and we went through a lot. We sent surveys to the community to learn what we did well, did not do well, what our strong points were, and what we could improve on. And really, we got a lot of focus and a lot of good feedback. We also conducted 11 focus groups with different demographics. And these are the 7 strategic focus areas that we developed based on all the things that we learned from our focus groups and our survey. And you can see on the bottom is time, talent, and treasures-based stewardship is one of the 7. But if you really do a deep dive into the first 6, stewardship is a part of all those. If you don't have a good time and talent stewardship program, you can't have ministries. It's hard to have educational things if you don't have that. So really, stewardship is the foundational item to everyone and everything we do in the church. And it's also a foundational item for things we do outside the church. So really, if we don't get stewardship right, we don't get anything right. So that was one of the lessons we learned as we looked into this, because we started to develop goals for all of these. And we realized very quickly that stewardship is that component that we need to consider in all aspects of this stuff. So next slide, please. I've used this slide with our parish council. I've used it with our parish priest. What I do after every one of our first Tuesday of the month sessions, I write meeting notes and I share them with the parish council. I share it with the priest so they can understand some of the key points that are coming out from these sessions. That's very important. And we've used this slide with both the parish council and the priest and others in the stewardship committee, talk about the 3 buckets of ownership. And I agree, and I think George alluded to that. My background is I came out of a Fortune 500 company, okay? A $15 billion company where we talked about leadership, we talked about selling. My background is sales and marketing. So as I talk to people, I go into the process of talking, where you're from, what are you doing, how can we help you? That's foreign to some people. So it's something I come and find it very natural. But we have talked about these 3 buckets of ownership, the commitment from the priest and the parish council. If you don't have alignment from the bottom of the organization to the top of the organization, something, you can't be successful, okay? Active stewardship committee, that has been our most difficult thing to recruit people to come and be involved in stewardship. And the main thing is they think all it is about asking for money. We try to tell them, no, that's not it. And we'll get into that a little bit later on. And then this frequent and inviting communications. I've learned a lot from Myra about how these communications should be structured, about telling stories, using pictures, talking about it from the basic point of life, how stewardship's involved, those things. The principles of trust. I take the first 2 of confidentiality and transparency to be givens. I mean, we need to be transparent, and the information we have about stewardship should be very confidential. In our church, it's only the parish priest and the office administrator have that information. When I get reports, it's basically, here's the total report, how many stewards we have, money we've given, averages, no names, no nothing. We don't need to know that information. And then the last thing about showing appreciation, celebrating, George talked about that a little bit. And it's really, I've learned that every one of our communications starts with the word thank you. We lead with thank you on everything we talk about stewardship, to show the appreciation and to show that it's all about giving thanks to the people that give and also to the Lord, okay? Next slide. So I think our second or third Tuesday meeting we had to put together some goals. We were asked to put goals around the ownership area. And these are the 3 goals that we put together. And we already had goals from our strategic plan around stewardship. And these were complementary to that and also very inclusive. But the first goal was about driving and forming a stewardship committee. And we've been struggling with this a little bit. And, you know, I learned some things from George tonight to kind of follow up and move things forward. But the next one was about driving this alignment and coordination. So we've set up meetings. So there's a brief, I'm not in the parish council today, but we give a brief update on stewardship every parish council meeting. The stewardship committee meets with the parish priest. I do every month to talk about what we're doing. We meet with the executive committee of the parish council every quarter. And then the last thing about this communication about what we want to talk about. Anything I want to stress here is a lot of this stuff does not need to be created by yourself. I go to the Metropolis website. I go to the Archdiocese website. Every church I go into, I look for their stewardship materials. I go to their website. I do everything I can to try to beg, borrow, and steal other information that I can kind of tailor to our community. I belong also to a church in California where my daughter lives, and I also belong to a church in Denver where another relative lives, because we visit a lot, and we've gotten involved with their stewardship. So I'm always trying to pick up things and learn from each other. And the other thing, we've really focused our communication beyond just the dollars. In the past, we used to talk about a lot, just was how much money we need. Now we're trying to get to where we're talking about time, talents, and treasures. Last month, I did an article on time and talents. We talked about where people had given their time and talents over the last six or 8 weeks. And we had pictures showing all these events, both internal and external. We had pictures from working at food pantries. We had pictures of the Goya kids cleaning the church in preparation for Holy Week. So we were doing a lot of different things to kind of to talk about the 3 aspects of stewardship and move away from just a dollar perspective. So we're learning more about how to communicate, what we should communicate, but again, always leading with thank you. Next slide. So what have we done since this new journey started in November of last year, when I was asked not only to do the strategic plan, but also to move over and become the stewardship committee chairman. I'm retired, so our priest thought I had plenty of time to go do those things. So we've been working on it. So we've refined our stewardship goals within the strategic plan. We had some based on what we're learning the first Tuesday every month. We're kind of moving those goals around a little bit, looking at what we're doing. We held time, talent, and treasures testimonials to kick off the 2023 campaign. We had the head of the men's group talk about time stewardship. We had our Sunday school director talk about talent stewardship. And then we had our parish council treasurer talk about treasures stewardship. Those are on the website. We're redoing our website. We've started in our monthly bulletin, the Stewardship Corner, where I write an article, different aspect. We've talked about time and talents, definitions of stewardship. This month, we are talking about treasures. Next month, we're talking about what stewardship provides to our church and our parishioners. Then we're going to talk about stewardship in children. We've engaged our Sunday school director to incorporate stewardship in the Sunday school curriculum. I found some stuff on the Metropolis website on what to use and some lessons there. So I've shared that with our Sunday school director to move that in. We've moved our communications to saying thank you. We've been talking about that, telling stories, and talk about, without time and talent stewardship, we'd have no ministries. And that stewardship goes outside the walls of the church into the external community that we live in. We've developed a rough draft for our communication plan. We've started to build the alignment, expanding the team. Coming to these meetings has been very, very good for me to meet people, learn things. Like I said, we've started the website redesign to incorporate new stewardship messages and engaging the Sunday school. And the Sunday school director was excited to say, yes, this would be a great thing to start training the kids from kindergarten and up. And I talked about the Goya cleaning the church in preparation for Holy Week. 2 of my granddaughters were there. It made me feel good to see them cleaning and serving the church and providing their time and talents to the church. So that was very, very good. Last slide. Okay, So Myra asked me to give you some of my thoughts around challenges, opportunities, ideas, and tips. It is this balance of time and talents versus treasures. You know, they're all equally important. And like I said, without time and talents, we'd have no ministries. We're also educating the parish on this vision of stewardship independence. Like many other churches, we rely on outside transactional income to run our parish, to pay our bills. Is that the right thing? Based on what I saw on the Metropolis website, no, it's not. We have to learn how to do that differently. And I actually use the Metropolis website information around the treasure side and how to make sure we're self-sufficient in our last letter I published on in our monthly bulletin. The biggest challenge we have is time commitment. We're all busy. We have other things, and to do some of this stuff, it takes time. So it's a commitment of stewardship time on the committee. And we're focusing on real life experiences. And the other thing I want to say is don't feel like you're alone. We can all learn from each other. We can share best practices. We can learn from each other. Don't recreate the wheel. There's lots of materials out there. Like I said, I go to the Metropolis, Archdiocese websites, other churches. I'm always pulling things down and learn from each other. Every communication should lead with thank you. And lastly, the last two things is, and this is something I really didn't realize until I got involved with these Tuesday sessions, that stewardship touches everyone in the community in every aspect. And stewardship goes beyond our parish walls. And when I was reading some of the Metropolis stuff, it's okay to have a festival, but use that for reasons to help people internal to the church and outside your church and the community, and even other parishes. And I think those are the messages we need to get out to our parishioners, what we need to be doing. So that's where we're at. This is what I'm learning. But again, thank you. It's been a great opportunity to sit and listen to everything and move forward. And, you know, we think we're getting better. But, you know, some people say we should judge ourselves based on how much more money we're raising. You know, that's one aspect to look. I also say we got to look at what we're doing with respect to time and talents, people committing their time and efforts and things like that. So hopefully, Myra, I educated some folks on what we've been doing and some of the aspects, and we're getting better every day. And things like this help us get better.
Thank you so much, George. It's George, I'm sorry, Pete.
That's okay. Okay. Yeah.
Thank you very much. That was very helpful and very informative. Yep. Any questions? It doesn't look like there's any questions. So go ahead, Patra.
I just wanted to say that was great. And I took a bunch of screenshots of what you had presented. So thank you. That really was very great. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, Owen, feel free to share the presentation. There's, you know, our priest and parish council president saw this before I gave it. So they're aligned too. So. Yep.
Hey, Pete, okay, I have a question for the team, Barry. Because we have obviously for the last two sessions have really been focusing on preparing goals. And, you know, do you feel like the goal setting has worked from a communication standpoint in terms of how it's been received by your parish council, how it's been received by your priest? When you're talking about it, when you're communicating with them, what's the receipt you're getting from them?
Well, first of all, goals are important because, you know, George said earlier about business plans. I run businesses today and I like business plans, but that's me. You know, it starts with what the roadmap is to what you want to achieve. So, you know, the goals and the business plan helps us get to there and also drives alignment. You know, if you don't have focus and goals, it's hard to get that alignment around the thing. Receptivity from the parish council. Most of these parish council members I grew up with in the church, or they were friends of my kids. So I've seen them grow up too. And yeah, I think we're getting there. We have moments, you know, we have a lot of people love festivals. I said, nothing wrong with festivals, but, you know, let's use that money for other things. Not does drive alignment and focus.
Great. Thank you. Any other questions? Father Jim, if I can ask you again to lead us in closing prayer.
Hey, Myra, before you do that, just a
Oh, I'm
reminder to
sorry.
everybody.
You're
Yeah,
right.
just a reminder to everybody. Starting next Tuesday, next month, the first Tuesday, we're going to move on to engagement. So we finished the first 3 sessions of the year on ownership. We're now going to do engagement. We'll do a deep dive on engagement next month, followed by some more group and goal working and sharing and deep dives there. And then a guest speaker will be our goal for the 3rd month of engagement. So please continue to join us. Now, Father Jim, if you don't mind doing a closing prayer. Thank you.
Through the prayers of Holy Fathers, Lord Jesus Christ, our God, have mercy on us and save us. Amen. God bless you all. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all very much.
Have a good month.
Great.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thank you, everyone.